cool. Wednesday night in the big city of Edenton. It's getting dark outside. Can you see? That's actually real pretty and real windy. I worked in the yard today, which is why I'm disgusting, which is fine. Eastern North Carolina at its finest. Holy cow. You know, it's funny. My husband grew up in Raleigh. I grew up in Rocky Mount. We've been in Edenton for, 20 years. And, boy, it's so funny to live in a tiny, tiny place and to be kind of disconnected from what's happening, particularly at the state level, for us. But to see how decisions in Raleigh affect people in Eastern North Carolina. So there's a new bill that's up for discussion in Raleighwood, and it is being proposed by Senator Lee. And it's happened a few times when Dan Forrest was running for lieutenant governor. He really was pushing for this. Right now, when you hear about school choice, you hear about vouchers, and currently they're only available for low-income families or for families who have children with disabilities. So that's just how it is. But this new bill being proposed by Senator Lee would give vouchers to everybody, so with children. So if you were an anesthesiologist in Raleigh, had access to Broughton High School, Daniels Middle School, some of the best, obviously I would say best best schools in the state, and you had 5 kids and they all went to St. David's, you would be eligible, even if you had made $700,000 a year, you would be eligible for $3,246 per child. So if you have 5 kids, what's that? $16,000 a year. Now your school might cost $25,000, so it's kind of a big deal. And I think what we've always been told is, school choice is for poor families, and this really proves that it's actually not. Because anybody that can afford a $25,000 a year school, an extra $3,000 is probably not a deal breaker for them, So I talked about that this morning, which is, some of you might be like, I feel like I'm in Groundhog Day. But this morning I got a message from Facebook saying that this is a controversial topic, and we're going to really limit. Basically, no one has seen the video unless you're watching it earlier. So I'm doing something I've never done before. I'm repeating the video live because I think it's really important. And it really concerns me that a social media platform would sort of ping this topic as controversial. Because I think sharing data is important and not controversial. And I'm surprised that this social media platform would be against that. I know, right? No, they're highly against controversial topics, but it's just newer on what is being considered controversial. So I'm going to talk about it again. And I did a different title and kind of talking about it in a broader way, maybe that it doesn't get flagged, but it's really important to me. So, because it relates to my family. So my son Amos, school choice or charter requirements are different state to state. That's right. So I'm particularly knowledgeable about North Carolina. That's kind of where I am, and particularly Eastern North Carolina. So when I was in grad school, my professor at NC State in my PhD program, that was back in the day when we had chalkboards, and they wrote the equation down for how it decides what district gets how much money. and it was 1 line, 2 line, another half line. It was a pretty big deal, you know? Yeah, that's interesting, Kathy. That's interesting. Kathy used to be a subscriber. I don't know if you are anymore. So I offered a little present today. Yesterday was my birthday, and I offered a gift. And what the gift is if you want to subscribe and you have not subscribed before, then you can come over and subscribe and send me your Venmo, and I'll send you your money back, because I think that's important. So anyway, so listen. So we have this new school choice thing, and you have to say, okay, what does that mean to me? How does that work? Well, in 2019, we spent $37 million, gave it to 405 private schools for 8,553 students. Honestly, I'm not even against some of that. I think that there probably are families that should have access to a different school. What I have problems with is $37 million being spent and there being absolutely no accountability and no oversight. So if you get a grant from the federal government for $30 million, they're going to require that you actually spend 10% on someone who is evaluating where the money is going. It's really important. So when we give $37 million to private schools and parents will say, this is what we want, this is what's important, what are the outcomes? What's happening? We know that public schools have to follow every single rule, dot every T, cross every I. I just said that backwards. But these schools don't. And it's just not, it's not fair. Public schools have to have licensed teachers. They have to do testing. They get graded in North Carolina based on how their children perform. So we know one thing is that poverty relates to school grade. So if you live in Wake County or Chapel Hill, you typically have A schools, right? Because you have less kids in poverty. That doesn't mean your teachers are better. We have pretty freaking awesome teachers where I live, but we do have high poverty. So if Amos, my son currently, let's say this bill passed, Amos currently receives $15,471. So that's how much money my school gets to educate Amos, okay? The average in North Carolina is, let me see if I write it down, $9,958. So let's say $10,000 is the average. And Amos gets $15,471. Now, if this new bill, Senator Lee's bill, gets passed, that means Amos would be up to $19,000. So the average in North Carolina is 10, which is probably about accurate for Adenton. And then 19 is what he would get if we left public school. So 15 to 19, that's 4,000. So my choice is, where I live, there is no private school that can take Amos, right? So the 15,000, Robin, that's 9,865 from North Carolina, $4,093 from state exceptional children, and the federal money is $1,514. So the federal government really does not chip in too much right there. So we have to think about, if I wanted to choose a private school, I would be given $4,000 extra dollars, right? But if it's really about school choice and it's about Adrian and what Adrian wants, then why don't I get to have all the money to give to my public school? Why can't I say, Ms. Newsom, I choose you and I want you to have this extra $4,000? It doesn't make sense, does it? I asked Governor Cooper. He couldn't answer it. I asked Superintendent Mark Johnson when he was superintendent for 5 minutes. He couldn't answer it. I've asked senators. I've asked, what's his name, who's running for governor, heaven help us, Mark Robinson. Nobody can answer it. You know why? Because it doesn't make any sense. That's why. The other big thing that I see as a flag is if you go into Ed Choice NC, you're going to see something that says this. It's a 60% average account value as a percentage of public school per student spending. So what they're telling you is, if we give public school students these vouchers, it will save us money. Because if we're spending $10,000 to educate Blair at the middle school, and we offer her parents $3,200, they might just leave. And that's going to save us 60%. And so then who's going to be left at public schools? Little people with disabilities, and probably people that are pretty poor or don't have the ability to, don't understand how this works. You have to apply. You don't get transportation necessarily, so that is going to X some people out. Hell, that might X me out. This is important. Yes, it is a heavy topic, especially when you've done it twice in one day. There's no empirical data that shows vouchers improve student outcomes. So I think we have people who truly believe this is amazing. We want, this is amazing. Our child needs this school. But what I would argue is you could be right, but you also need to show the data, So we're talking about this new bill produced by Senator Lee, which would make an education voucher available to any family in North Carolina, no matter if they are low income or not. Currently, it requires low income. Do charter schools get the same $10,000 per student? So charter schools are a little bit different. And you'll notice that there's not really been as much rhetoric or pushing. The General Assembly is not pushing the charter school conversation as much. And I think it's because charter schools have to follow the same testing as traditional public schools. And what we're seeing in North Carolina, at least, is that they are not performing well. Why are they willing to pay for the difference in the cost of fund? Why not the whole thing? I don't know, Susan. It's a really good question. So if you're conservative, like I am, fiscally conservative, and you have somebody that says, let's up the amount we're going to spend to $300 million to private schools so parents can have school choice, and you have no plan in mind for wondering where the money has been spent, you can't tell me you're a Republican, not a real one. I think I'm actually a real Republican. Like, I care about our tax dollars and want to make sure that people are following the rules. Yay, Bonnie. But seriously, $300 million and none of us are going to ask questions about where is the money going? I don't know how many current charter schools there are in North Carolina. I think maybe 120. Did I just make that up? What the people like about so much about this is, at least government, is they don't have to follow the rules. They just hand over the money and say, adios, see ya, goodbye, buenas noches, hasta luego, no more see you ever again. The goal to end public education in North Carolina. I don't think that is the majority of people's goals. I do believe that there are a few instrumental people who, I know that they believe that a system that involved kind of
Help me change that.
vouchering out education would meet the state's requirements and cost tremendous amount less. Okay, I will. But, you know, what's Amos going to do? So we live in Eastern North Carolina. We don't have any other options. So that would mean we would leave this beautiful part of the state if we wanted to have access to a private school that would serve him. I don't think there's any better public school, but what will happen to our public schools when tons of kids leave, you know? Am I changing the channel?
Yes.
Okay, what are you watching?
Down here, like this way.
This way?
No.
Hold on. Let me get the right door to show on. Okay, this door, and then we're going night-night, okay?
No.
Yes. The limit was 100. Yeah, and then they expanded it.
Like this way. Hey.
How many private schools are there? I don't know. I do know that we have about 100,000 students in North Carolina in private
Like
school.
this way.
Okay.
It's on 4.
Oh, season 4? Okay, well, move. I can't see. Okay. Okay. This way?
Like this way.
That's season 3.
Like this way.
What time zone are you in? I'm in Eastern.
No.
This way.
Like this way. Job
What if you
day.
were homeschooling? Do you receive money?
Job day.
Where is it?
Start
Well, I can't see. You're in the way.
like this way.
Job day. Okay. Well, sit down.
It's not time for your shower.
Well, it's almost time for your shower.
It's not, Mommy. Okay, you won't.
Yeah, there's no reason to leave. But the problem is, Phyllis,
Yay.
what other states have seen that have done this kind of thing is a lot of other people will leave. And then what we've seen is public schools, some have to shut down because there is not enough money to run them. So if you ended up, and we would lose services. I mean, we're already, where we live, like from last year to this year, there is no Spanish 1 offered in middle school. There's no English 1. Like, these are things that if you live in Raleigh, you have access to high school classes in middle school. Foreign language. We don't. We don't have access to teachers. When the General Assembly did away with the Teaching Fellows program, it really about destroyed us. I mean, we always had teaching fellows. They were the best babysitters. They would come in, you get a break to go to school, and then you come teach for 3 to 5 years. Maybe they would get married, move here, enjoy Eastern North Carolina. It's very hard for us to compete, to get qualified teachers who want to come here and stay. So the teachers we have that are qualified, we have because they love this part of the world. They're from here. Maybe they married somebody from here. They have roots here. But we need to be able to compete, really compete as students are graduating from universities. And North Carolina is just not the place they want to come. You've lost your retirement. I mean, so when you retire, you don't get your health insurance anymore. I mean, you don't teach to get rich, right? It's a calling. But I think at some point people are like, I want to be able to have children and feed them. And it's hard to blame them, you know? So it's a really big topic to me. I think it's super important. And I think some people have really struggle with this idea that school choice is undermining the very thing of public schools. But, you know, how do you make it fair? So if somebody has 11 kids, are you going to give them $38,000? And then my neighbor has no kids, so she gets no money. I just think at some point when we start giving money back to be used for things, you're going to have people say, like, I don't drive. I don't have a car. Why do I have to pay for the highways? Or I live in the country. I don't live downtown. You could just really, it's a slippery slope to me. We're offered public transportation. The state doesn't say, you don't like the cat bus, we're going to get you a car. It doesn't work like that. And that doesn't mean that there aren't times that a school system maybe needs to pay for a child to leave because they're not getting right education. Absolutely agree with that. But if you're living in Chapel Hill or Raleigh and you have access to Broughton High School that has dozens and dozens of AP classes in the International Baccalaureate program, I don't think you should get money to go to a private school and then I'm going to do nothing to see where the money is even going. And don't forget, a private school is defined very, very liberally, which is interesting. So here's what it is to be a private school in North Carolina. You have to submit a notice of intent to operate a conventional private K-12 school along with a copy of a fire inspection and a certificate of occupancy. So in 45 minutes, I could have a school started up, and then I could get the fire, Billy Bass, to come over here, do a fire inspection, and get a certificate of occupancy from the building inspector. I bet by Friday I could have this house a school. In North Carolina would let me operate and start just taking in people. And it's happening. We have a person in Elizabeth City that's got 90,000 and they have about a half a GED in a building. Just ask for, where's the money going? What's it doing? What are those children doing? Is it better? And if you came back to me and said, the data really shows this is great, then count me in. I'm ready to listen. But if you can't show me data, no siree. No. Thanks. Subscribers. See you later.